Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at the terrors of the night. Ooh,
Wow.
or a discourse of apparitions by Thomas Nashe. It's not a play. We're not doing a play. This is just a prose text. Nothing just about a prose text, but we technically do plays. But this is a bit of mission creep. We're looking for something to possibly mix in with some other material and seeing if this is a good fit. And we have a relatively tight team today. We have Tamara and we have Eric and myself, Robert. We do a little wave, unless you're listening to this as audio, in which case the waving is
Hello.
implied.
Hmm.
So we're just going to alternate, and the system of alternation is Tamara will be first, then Eric, and then myself, and that is the way it will go. We have a massive opening gambit. We have a dedication. We're going to read the dedication, and I'll bounce us across as we go. But it is to the newly kindled clear lamp of virginity, and the excellent adored high wonder of sharp wit and sweet beauty, Mistress Elizabeth Carey, who we know as a playwright because we've done the tragedy of Mariam. I'm assuming it's the same Elizabeth Carey. And yes, so not only a playwright, but also someone with clout, and therefore writers write to you and say, give me money for this bit of arse licking. Anyway, Mistress Elizabeth Carey, sole daughter and heir to the thrice noble and renowned Sir George Carey, Knight Marshal, etc. Tamara, take us into this dedication.
Hmm. Rare adorned mistress, whom all that know admire, and not malice itself, but doth honour. True stem of nobility, outflourishing your sex or your age, pure saint-like picture of sobriety and modesty, sacred and immaculate virgin star, clear, if any living, from the original sin of thought, give me leave, though contemptible and abject, once more to sacrifice my worthless wit to your glory. Many fervent vows and protestations of observance, your bountiful gracious deserts towards me have intransitely extracted, which yet remain in the ore unwrought and untried. As touching this short gloss or annotation on the foolish terrors of the night, you partly are acquainted from whose motive imposition it first proceeded, as also what strange sudden cause necessarily produced that motion. A long time since hath it lain suppressed by me, until the urgent importunity of a kind friend of mine, to whom I was sundry ways beholding, wrested a copy from me. That copy progressed from one scrivener's shop to another, and at length grew so common that it was ready to be hung out for one of their signs, like a pair of indentures.
And Eric, I'll ask you to take up the cudgels.
Whereupon I thought it as good for me to reap the fruit of mine own labors as to let some unskilful penman or noverent maker starch his ruff and new spade his beard with the benefit he made of them. Accept of them, exquisite mistress, as the best testimony I have yet to express the duty that I owe. A little more leisure and prosperity will beget better labors, wherein I will enjoin my spirit to be a peremptory combatant for your praises, against all vulgar, deep, flattered mediocrity and pale, penurious beauty, which gives dull painters store of gold to solder up their lean dints of deformity. Against your perfections no tongue can accept. Miraculous is your wit, and so is acknowledged by the wittiest poets of our age, who have vowed to enshrine you as their second Delia. Temperance herself hath not temperater behavior. Yeah. Temperance herself hath not temperater behavior than you. Religious piety hath no humble handmaid that she more delights in. A worthy daughter are you of so worthy a mother. borrowing as another Phoebe from her song-like resplendence the orient beams of your radiance. Into the Muses' society herself she hath lately adopted and purchased divine Petrarch, another monument in England. Ever honored may she be of the royalest breed of wits, whose purse is open to her poor beadsman's distresses.
Well may I say it, because I have tried it. Never lived a more magnificent lady of her degree on this earth. A number of men there be who, pursuing the highway to the Indies, have perished in lingering expectation before they could get hither. But a nearer cut have I found in her extraordinary liberality and bounty, and to a company of my malcontent companions will discover, if it please them, how to be gainful and copy-coping navigators, if they will insist in my directions. Now I must tie myself to the printer's paper limits. It's a bit late, mate. And knit up much thankfulness in few words. Dear mistress, persuade yourself that no frowning misfortune or any accident whatsoever shall divorce me from your reverence. No more I crave in requital, but that you would put me in the check roll of your remembrance, and not salute me as a stranger. Your virtue's immovable votary, Thomas Nashe. Okay. Wow. I mean, he's laying it on a bit thick.
Could you suck up anymore?
I, I mean, there's a lot of this is commonplace boilerplate stuff, but he's actually quite witty with it in places, and I do quite like this idea of we're hitting the word count. We can't afford any more paper, so I have to stop writing.
I do quite like that because it's like, it's like the dedication thing that you have to do, and just in case she now thinks that it's a bit short, it's actually because
Yeah, I could go on for pages more of this stuff. Because you are so amazing. You are so cool, and all the things. The immaculate virgin star that you are. So
we've hit the word count and
yeah, have to stop.
Yeah.
Mm.
I just like that bit. A little more leisure and prosperity will beget better labors. So, like, if you pay me and, let me rest a bit and entertain me, basically. Yeah.
Yes, because I'm not quite sure how sometimes these things work. Is the dedication is on spec? Is that you basically send it off and say, "Hi, I've written this really cool thing about you. Will you give me some money? Will you take me on, as a retainer?" And I don't know much about the background of Nashe in terms of his relationship with Elizabeth Carey or his relationship with some of his patrons. And that's something for another time and another forum. But there's this thing. It turns up in some texts of, oh, I wasn't thinking of releasing it, but so many people read it in draft that they said, oh, it's too good, Matt. And it's getting copied. Everyone's copying it all the time. So I thought I've got to get some money out of this because it's nothing's coming to me and everyone else is getting pleasure from it. So it must be, it's a humble brag, really, isn't it?
yeah, it's a bit, it reminds me of influencers in a way. It's that whole thing of people tell me I'm good at this, so I've decided to release a video course that you can download here and
Yeah. Right. Well, that's the stuff that doesn't matter in the slightest because it's the stuff we'll dump. But it was interesting. Stuff that's getting a little more to the purpose coming up as we have his sort of introductory bit to the reader. So once again, Tamara, first paragraph down to tossed it out of sight. And Eric, if you could do the second, that'd be fabulous.
To master or goodman reader. generally dispersed east or west. Gentlemen, according to the laudable custom, I am to court you with a few premises considered, but a number of you there be who consider neither premises nor conclusion, but piteously torment title pages on every post, never reading further of any book than imprinted by Simeon such a sign, and yet, with your dudgeon judgments, will desperately presume to run up to the hard hilts through the whole bulk of it. Martin Momus and splay-footed Zoilus, that in the 8th and 6th age of poetry, and first year of the reign of Tarleton Toys, kept a foul stir in Paul's churchyard, and now revived again. And like wanton whelps that have worms in their tongues, slaver and betouse every paper they meet withal. Yeah, if they chance but on a mote or a wind bladder, they never have done with it till they have clean bandied and tossed it out of sight.
For my part, I wish that I may be both out of their sight and out of their mind too. And if their whiny wits must needs be working, that they would rather be tailors to make than butchers or cobblers to amend or to mar. Come, come, I know their dull tricks well enough. You shall have them lie in childbed 31 weeks and 8 days of 3 bad lines and a half, and afterward spend a whole 12 month in sponging and sprucing them. Honest, thrifty Peter Littleton discharging their commons all the while. But such poor fellows as I, that cannot put out money to be paid again when we come from Constantinople, either must have our work dispatched by the week's end, or else we may go beg. And yet I will not beg of them, neither go the world never so hard, nor not so much as a good word. But if in word or deed I hear that they wrong me, I'll meet them right if I can. And so I leave them to stop mustard pots with my leaves if they will, or to their own will whatsoever. Thomas Nashe.
Okay. There's some interesting stuff there about what happens to words when they end up printed. That they're title pages on every post. Used to stop mustard pots with my leaves if they will. It's sort of that he is being a bit playful here. There's a lot of stuff that's a little bit impenetrable, and I'm sort of zooming in and out of what actually he's saying there, because it's very much about the culture of the time, and there's lots of references there, and it's like you just feel like you need a whole load of footnotes to understand a lot of it. But yeah, that he's being playful with what happens with words when they're printed. It's like, yeah, this stuff doesn't necessarily end up. People sometimes just don't read more than the title page. That's literally all that will happen to my work. Most people are just going to look at the front cover, read the first few lines, and then move on. And actually, that's what happens to all of us. And yeah, so he's talking about presumably the various booksellers in St. Paul's churchyard there. A few years back when Tarleton was alive, and etc., etc. So yeah, a little impenetrable, but there's some nice little bits in there that I think you can do something with. Anything grabbing anyone else?
I can't tell if he's being funny or aggressive, just because, or like passive aggressive, like
Yeah.
that bit about, I know their dull tricks well enough. You shall have them lie in childbed 31 weeks and 8 days of 3 bad lines and a half. It's like, what?
Mm.
And then that bit about like, such poor fellows as I, they cannot put out money to be paid again. Either must have our work dispatched by the week's end, or else we may go beg. So basically, I have a deadline, people. Come on, let's do this.
Yeah, but also, he lives off his words. He's one of the, a relatively early writer in the sense of, this is his job. He writes things. That's how he makes his living. And incredibly hard it is. I mean, we already had that in the dedication of, if I had a bit more money, I could write better stuff that's really nice about you. And it really is so many playwrights, writers in general, pamphlet writers. They're all living hand to mouth, a lot of them. They really are.
Like nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It does strike me a little bit, and I'm not sure if I'm misinterpreting some of this, but it does strike me a little bit like, um, like is he complaining about people judging a book by its cover and not reading it,
Mm.
but then passing judgment on it anyway, even though they haven't read it?
Yeah, I think that's basically what's going on here. I think there is other stuff going on here. It is a little difficult to unpack in this passing by because it's really we're not here for this
Yeah.
stuff. We're just doing this bit
Yeah.
because of stuff.
It
So
just reminded me of a lot of those fanboys on the internet who don't actually watch any of the things that they complain about. Just
Except written,
saying.
mm,
except not written by AI.
yeah,
Nah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
Okay.
I just sorry, I just like the bit about like generally dispersed east or west. Like it doesn't matter where you live. I know where you live. I know who you are. I know your type. I know yeah.
Okay, let's actually get into the terrors of the night. Let's find out about the a discourse of apparitions. So, starting with Tamara, then Eric, then myself, we'll just jump from paragraph to paragraph.
A little to be, well, let me properly start. The Terrors of the Night, or A Discourse of Apparitions. A little to beguile time idly discontented, and satisfy so me of my solitary friends here in the country, I have hastily undertook to write of the weary fancies of the night, wherein if I weary none with my weak fancies, I will hereafter lean harder on my pen and fetch the pedigree of my praise from the utmost of pains.
As touching the terrors of the night, they are as many as our sins. The night is the devil's black book, where he recordeth all our transgressions. Even as when condemned man is put into a dark dungeon, secluded from all comfort of light or company, he doth nothing but despairfully call to mind his graceless former life, and the brutish outrages and misdemeanors that have thrown him into that desolate horror. So when night in her rusty dungeon hath imprisoned our eyesight, and that we are shut separately in our chambers from resort, the devil keepeth his audit in our sin, guilty consciences. No sense but surrenders to our memory a true bill of parcels of his detestable impieties. The table of our heart is turned to an index of iniquities, and all our thoughts are nothing but texts to condemn us.
The rest we take in our beds is such another kind of rest as the weary traveller taketh in the cool, soft grass in summer, who thinking there to lie at ease and refresh his tired limbs, layeth his fainting head unwares on a loathsome nest of snakes.
Well have the poets termed night the nurse of cares, the mother of despair, the daughter of hell.
Some divines have had this conceit that God would have made all day and no night, if it had not been to put us in mind there is a hell as well as a heaven.
Such is the peace of the subjects as is the peace of the prince under whom they are governed. As God is entitled the Father of Light, so is the devil surnamed the Prince of Darkness, which is the night. The only peace of mind that the devil hath is despair, wherefore we live in his nightly kingdom of darkness, must needs taste some disquiet.
The raven and the dove that were sent out of Noah's ark to discover the world after the general deluge may well be an allegory of the day and the night. The day is our good angel the dove, that returneth to our eyes with an olive branch of peace in his mouth, presenting quiet and security to our distracted souls and consciences. The night is that ill angel the raven, which never cometh back to bring any good tidings of tranquillity. A continual messenger he is of dole and misfortune. The greatest curse almost that in the scripture is threatened is that the ravens shall pick out their eyes in the valley of death. This cursed raven the night pecks out men's eyes in the valley of death. It hindereth them from looking to heaven for succour, where their Redeemer dwelleth. Wherefore, no doubt, it is a time most fatal and unhallowed. This being proved that the devil is a special predominant planet of the night, and that our Creator for our punishment hath allotted it him as his peculiar signory and kingdom from his inveterate envy. I will amplify the ugly terrors of the night. The names importing his malice, which the scripture is plentiful of, I will here omit, lest some men should think I went about to conjure. Sufficeth us to have this heedful knowledge of him, that he is an ancient malcontent, and seeketh to make anyone desperate like himself. Like a cunning fowler to this end, he spreadeth his nets of temptation in the dark, that men might not see to avoid them. As the poet saith, Quae nimis apparent retia vitat avis, to open nets even simple birds do shun. Therefore, in another place, which cannot be but the devil hath read, he counselleth thus.
Noctem peccatis et fraudibus obice nubum. By night time sin, and cloak thy fraud with clouds. When hath the devil commonly first appeared unto any man, but in the night? In the time of infidelity, when spirits were so familiar with men that they called them di penates, their household gods or their lares, they never sacrificed unto them till sun setting. Their Robin Goodfellows, elves, fairies, hobgoblins of our latter age, which idolatrous former days in the fantastical world of Greece, yclept fauns, satyrs, dryads, and hamadryads, did most of their merry pranks in the night. Then ground they malt, and had hempen shirts for their labours, danced in rounds in green meadows, pinched maids in their sleep that swept not their houses clean, and led poor travellers out of their way notoriously.
It is not to be gainsaid, but the devil can transform himself into an angel of light, appear in the day as well as in the night, but not in this subtle world of Christianity, so usual as before. If he do, it is when men's minds are extraordinarily thrown down with discontent, or inly terrified with some horrible concealed murder, or other heinous crime, close smothered in secret. In the day he may smoothly in some mild shape insinuate, but in the night he takes upon him like a tyrant. There is no thief that is half so hardy in the day as he is in the night. No more is the devil. A general principle it is, he that doth ill hateth the light. I think we'll pause there. Shall we pause there?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really quite enjoying this.
Too much fun. It's, yeah.
Because it really is asking for us to go, welcome, strangers.
Enter at your own peril,
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes, I do wish Valentine Dahl was still alive, because he has exactly the right voice for this, but alas. So yeah, and you know, they're working through basic principles here. Dark is scary, light is not. Dark associated with evil, light lesser. But evil can still function in the light, as we know if we've actually read Dracula rather than watch any of the films. You know, Dracula can. He's okay in the light. He's just not as powerful. He's just a bit weaker. He doesn't, you know, melt away or anything. That's just something they made up in a film, as opposed to in that documentary account by Bram Stoker, which is entirely true.
Uh, for me, this reads more like you know how like on various platforms now you have like Tumblr or like I don't know writing platforms, but it was so like mostly Tumblr. You get like the hashtag 3 a.m. thoughts. This is
Yes.
basically it. This is it's like lying in bed, not being able to sleep, and it's like thinking about the ring.
Rambling night thoughts.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I just love it so much.
And it's those sort of repetitions as well. What is the night is the nurse of cares, the mother of despair, the daughter of hell. It's the
I
do
love
everything in threes.
the daughter of hell,
Mm,
who itself is the daughter of Loki. But yeah.
mm,
I liked the reference to the sprites because he's like, so they do their stuff in the days, just to let you know.
mm,
They're not. He's making a difference here.
mm. Yeah, well, it's also that trying to incorporate pre-Christian worship into a Christian universe as well.
Yeah.
So it's like these
It's,
things function in a slightly different way, and they're sort of more merry pranks. These aren't they're not demons in quite the same way as your pucker Satan thing.
but that's what fascinates me about it because he's like trying to somehow work it into the thing. But
Mm,
anyway, it's
yeah,
just
he's having a go. He's having a
Mm,
go.
he's trying.
Yeah, he's trying.
The,
I
like the poor Raven gets such a bad like rep.
Yeah.
It's like the bird of hell or something like that, basically. But
Ravens
yeah.
shall pick out their eyes in the valley of death. You suggesting that might be bad representation? Do you think they need a better agent?
Well, I mean, it's
Also,
basically
I feel
like
like isn't that crows rather than
Well, they're
ravens?
all the same sort of family
yeah.
thing.
Right.
They're all a bit carrion-y in that sense.
Mm.
So they will go for the eyes first, to be fair, because
Yeah,
they're
true.
quite juicy.
Mm. Mm.
I
You know.
mean, yeah, that makes
Eh,
sense.
I still want to befriend one day, but
Well, they're very intelligent.
Yeah.
So if you get on good side, they will remember.
mm,
If you piss them off, they will
they will
also
remember
remember.
too.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, yeah, no, the that whole COVID COVID section of the bird family, they're very sharp,
Mm.
and they have a very that I've seen things on. Yeah, anyway, I'll
Yeah.
move on.
I thought you said COVID, not
No,
Corbett, and
COVID,
I'm like,
sorry.
no,
Yeah,
there's an
I
R in
for a
it.
second there I was like
Yeah,
COVID.
no, I did
Oh,
misspeak, so you didn't mishear. Anyway,
COVID family of the bird.
yes,
I mean, it's
it's
called bird
grown.
flu for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
So we have the general principle that if you're going to do bad things, do it in the dark, because that's what thieves and Satan gets up to. So
Yes,
murder.
Prince of Darkness.
yes. So Tamara, uh, t continue this journey.
This Machiavellian trick hath he in him worth the noting, that those whom he dare not united or together encounter, disjoined and divided, he will one by one assail in their sleep. And even as ruptures and cramps do then most torment a man when the body with any other disease is distempered, so the devil, when with any other sickness or malady the faculties of our reason are enfeebled and distempered, will be most busy to disturb us and torment us.
In the quiet silence of the night, he will be sure to surprise us. I couldn't help it. When he infallibly knows we shall be unarmed to resist, and that there will be full auditory granted him to undermine or persuade what he lists. All that ever he can scare us with are but Seleucus airy castles, terrible bugbear brags, and naught else, with which with the least thought of faith are quite vanished and put to flight. Neither in his own nature dare he come near us, but in the name of sin, and as God's executioner. Those that catch birds imitate their voices. So will he imitate the voices of God's vengeance to bring us, like birds, into the net of eternal damnation.
Children, fools, sick men, or madmen he is most familiar with, for he still delights to work upon the advantage, and to them he boldly revealeth the whole astonishing treasury of his wonders.
It will be demanded why, in the likeness of one's father or mother or kinsfolks, he oftentimes presents himself unto us.
No other reason can be given of it but this, that in those shapes which he supposeth most familiar unto us, and that we are inclined to with a natural kind of love, we will sooner hearken to him than otherwise.
Should he not disguise himself in such subtle forms of affection, we would fly for him as a serpent, and eschew him with that hatred he ought to be eschewed. If any ask why he is more conversant and busy in churchyards and places where men are buried than in any other places, it is to make us believe that the bodies and souls of the departed rest entirely in his possession, and the peculiar power of death is resigned to his disposition. A rich man delights in nothing so much as to be incessantly raking in his treasury, to be turning over his rusty gold every hour. The bones of the dead, the devil counts his chief treasury, and therefore is he continually raking amongst them. And the rather he doth it, and that the living which hear it should be more unwilling to die, insomuch as after death their bones should take no rest.
It was said of Catiline, Voltam gestavit in manibus. With the turning of a hand he could turn and alter his countenance. Far more nimble and sudden is the devil in shifting his habit, his form he can change, and cog as quick as thought.
What do we talk of one devil? There is not a room in any man's house but is pestered and close packed with a camp royal of devils. Chrysostom saith, the air and earth are 3 parts inhabited with spirits. Hereunto the philosopher alluded when he said, nature made no voidness in the whole universal. For no place be it no bigger than a pockhole in a man's face, but is close thronged with them. Infinite millions of them will hang swarming about a worm-eaten nose.
Don Lucifer himself, their grand capitano, asketh no better throne than a blear eye to set up his state in. Upon a hair they will sit like a knit, and overdredge a bald pate like a white scurf. The wrinkles in old witches' visages they eat out to entrench themselves in. Okay, I think we do need to stop here because there's some really nice. It's like you're covered in them, man. They're everywhere. They're all over you. You're surrounded by them. That's really in a pre-germ world. That's sort of what they're talking about here, isn't it? It's that we're basically just covered with,
Sin.
we're covered in germs all over the place, and that, in a sense, aren't they a kind of devil?
Ooh.
Yeah. See, they're coming for you. But yeah, he's really he's still enjoying it.
Don Lucifer.
Yeah, a Grand Capitano.
I
I
love
do
that.
quite. I think we need t-shirts. Don Lucifer, Grand Capitano.
Definitely.
I
Mm,
think that'd be great.
mm.
There's just so much in here that you could put on t-shirts.
Yeah, I mean it's really was it Eric put it in the chat? Well, welcome to my TED talk.
About
Hi,
the
I'm
devil.
Satan. Is that yes, this is in theory a sort of instruction manual. Not an instruction manual, but it's telling you about this. It's it's a piece about um terrifying things. It's not a narrative as of yet. I mean, there might be a narrative later, but it's setting up, and it's like the more it tells you about these things, is quite out. It's a bit creepy. It is creeping me out a bit. This
Starting to
idea
be
that
creepy. Yeah, I was
we are
just
surrounded by demons.
I just looked at my door and realized the door to the corridor was open. And I was like, "Hmm?" Yeah, he does specifically say it's not an instruction manual, by the way, further up. I think we
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
ran past that, but he was like, I'm not going to put certain things in here because otherwise some people are going to say that I'm doing witchcraft, and I'm definitely not doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a responsible pamphleteer.
Hmm.
Didn't get past the editor. But yeah.
I just
I
like
am
the
I am going to go and close
imagery.
my door really quickly.
And we never saw Tamara again.
I mean,
Um,
is she really Tamara? Do we know?
well, this is the thing: is they can appear as any of our family. So
Yeah.
how would we know whether you're really Tamara or not? Because obviously disguising himself in subtle forms of affection.
Mm.
Otherwise we'd fly from you like a serpent.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Poor
But
serpents, another animal that gets a bad rep.
yeah. Well,
like the imagery, I mean, it's quite graphic, isn't it?
mm,
Be it no bigger than a pockhole in a man's face, who hangs swarming about a worm-eaten nose,
yeah. I
or
mean,
the
infinite
wrinkles.
millions of them. There are
Yeah.
infinite millions of them. I mean, it's the inverse of the whole "how many angels can dance on the head of a pin"
Mm.
thing. The answer of which is many as want to. They're angels; they can do what they like. Um,
I
I
mean, they
do,
probably have better things to do.
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Why would they bother? You know.
It is kind of fascinating though because it's this is really old writing. It shouldn't be making us feel creeped out, but it does.
Yeah. No, Nash knows what he's doing. He is deliberately, even though he's making it very approachable and very reasonable. This sort of overwritten style is there to be, quite fun. He is quite a funny writer. It's not that time has moved on and we're finding him funny because he's doing this on purpose. But yeah, just telling people inverted commas facts about the dark and demons. It just drip feeding ideas into the back of our amygdalas there, to just get us ticking over.
Well, also it's that thing of like, if you're sitting around a campfire telling the story, it's like, and suddenly a twig goes snap. Oh
Yeah,
shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
The demons are everywhere.
this is why I was like, is my door closed? Because
yeah.
there is something about reading this in the evening
Mm.
that really works.
Yes, we're it is dark outside. Just about we're doing this entirely the wrong time of year. Spring is here, and the days are actually getting quite light and pleasant. And yeah, in terms of pitching this and using this, it's very much a sort of October November type of thing, isn't it? Or Christmas even. Okay, let's move on. Next page. Don Grand Capitano. Tamara, continue our tale of multiple demons.
If in one man a whole legion of devils have been billeted, how many 100,000 legions retain to a term at London? If I said, but to a tavern, it were an infinite thing. In Westminster Hall, a man can scarce breathe for them, for in every corner they hover as thick as motes in the sun.
The druids that dwelt in the Isle of Man, which are famous for great conjurers, are reported to have been lousy with familiars. Had they but put their finger and their thumb unto their neck, they could have plucked out a whole nest of them.
There be them that think every spark in a flame is a spirit, and that the worms which at sea eat through a ship are so also, which may very well be. For have not you seen one spark of a fire burn a whole town, and a man with a spark of lightning made blind or killed outright? It is impossible the guns should go off as they do, if there were not a spirit either in the fire or in the powder.
Now, for worms. What makes a dog run mad but a worm in his tongue? And what should that worm be but a spirit? Is there any reason such a small vermin as they are should devour such a vast thing as a ship, or have the teeth to gnaw through iron and wood? No, no, they are spirits, or else it were incredible.
Tullius Hostilius, who took upon him to conjure up Jove by Numa Pompilius' books, had no sense to quake and tremble at the wagging and shaking of every leaf, but that he thought all leaves are full of worms, and those worms are wicked spirits.
If the bubbles in streams were well searched, I'm persuaded they would be found to be little better. Hence it comes that mares, as Columella reporteth, looking their forms in the water. Oh no, Ismares. Sorry, I thought he was doing a bit of Latin. Hence it comes that he was talking about water. It threw me. Hence it comes that mares, as Columella reporteth, looking their forms in the water, run mad. A flea is but a little beast, yet if she were not possessed with a spirit, she could never leap and skip so as she doth. Froissart saith the Earl of Foix had a familiar that presented itself unto him in the likeness of two rushes fighting with one another, not so much as Tewkesbury mustard, but hath a spirit in it, or else it would never bite so. Have we not read of a number of men that have ordinarily carried a familiar or a spirit in a ring instead of a spark of a diamond? Why, I can tell ye, we cannot break a crumb of bread so little as one of them will be if they list.
From this general discourse of spirits, let us digress and talk another while of their separate natures and properties.
The spirits of the fire, which are the purest and perfectest, are merry, pleasant, and well inclined to wit, but nevertheless giddy and unconstant.
Those whom they possess they cause to excel in whatever they undertake, or poets or boon companions, they are out of question.
Socrates' genius was one of this stamp, and the dove, wherewith the Turks hold Mahomet their prophet to be inspired. What their names are, and under whom they are governed, the discovery of witchcraft hath amplified at large, wherefore I am exempted from that labour. But of the divinest quintessence of metals and of wines are many of these spirits extracted. It is almost impossible for any to be encumbered with ill spirits who is continually conversant in the excellent restorative distillations of wit and of alchemy. Those that ravenously inglut themselves with gross meats, and respect not the quality, but the quantity of what they eat, have no affinity with these spirits of the fire.
A man that will entertain them must not pollute his body with any gross carnal copulation or inordinate beastly desires, but love pure beauty, pure virtue, and not have his affections linsey-woolsey intermingled with lusts and things worthy of liking.
As, for example, if he love good poets, he must not countenance ballad makers. If he have learned physicians, he must not favour horse leeches and mountebanks. For a good spirit and for a bad spirit and a good can never endure to dwell together. I'm going to pause there. Interesting thoughts there. Again, this is where the humor's really starting to come through, isn't it? It's like he's working his way through the logic that people say about spirits. And it's like, they're everywhere, man. They're everywhere. They're in the sparks of the fire, and they're in the worms in the ground, and they're in the bit there, and it's they're to the left and the side, and it's just, and he's referring to authorities as well, but then he's saying, it's in the water, it's in the trees, it's in mustard, it's in the spark of a diamond. It's like it's sort of starting to get a bit beyond that series of a bit spooky, bit grandiose, but relatively sensible, to just bollocks, isn't it? Tamara.
My favorite line is, in Westminster Hall, a man can scarce breathe for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like budum tish.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pure rim shot there. And I also like, again, you were saying about how he's not doing the other thing. So it's like, if you want to talk about some of the other stuff, go to The Discovery of Witchcraft, which is actually genuinely quite a good book, because it debunks a lot of witch material. It's actually quite interesting. Um, but it's like if you love good poets, you won't count us as ballad makers. And I'm trying to remember where Nash sits on that spectrum. I mean, I suspect he's not, and also don't have gross carnal copulation. Okay, it's got to be pure,
No
pure love.
inordinate beastly desires.
Yes, you can have sex, but you can't enjoy it, and it mustn't be for any other purpose than procreation. And if you have fun, you're doing it wrong. Okay.
They put the fun in funeral. Wait, no, that's not
Yeah.
how you pronounce it.
I thought that was only the rule for women, but
No. No one's allowed to enjoy it. No, absolutely not. No.
Ah.
No. Ooh, ooh, bad. Having fun leads to death. It's the early modern rule. And most episodes.
Pretty
of it.
much.
And most
Yeah.
episodes of CSI.
I like how you have the Lindsay Wolsey line, which
Yes,
is like
I was going to bring
like
that up.
tiny wimey wibbly wobbly.
Yeah, I need to work this into, like, we need to make Lindsay Wolsey a thing again. That needs to be a
Well,
thing.
we kind of do. It's any any artificial fiber, you know. It's a nylon shirt. Okay. Let us move on. It's interesting. It's great. It's bouncing along. And we're about, a quarter of the way through now, and it's sort of just starting to go, is it going to get to a point anytime soon? And I don't think it is. And that's fine. It doesn't have to. But yeah, continues to bounce along. Tamara, I think you have a reasonably chunky-et one there coming up.
All right. Those spirits of the fire, however, I term them comparatively good in respect of a number of bad, yet are they not simply well inclined? For they be by nature ambitious, haughty, and proud, nor do they love virtue for itself any whit, but because they would overquell and outstrip others with the vainglorious ostentation of it. A humour of monarchizing and nothing else it is, which makes them affect rare qualified studies. Many atheists are with these spirits inhabited. To come to the spirits of the water, the earth, and the air, they are dull, phlegmatic drones, things that have much malice without any great might. Drunkards, misers, and women they usually retain too. Water, you all know, breedeth a medley kind of liquor called beer. With these watery spirits they were possessed that first invented the art of brewing. A quagmire consisting of mud and sand sendeth forth the like puddly mixture.
All rooms, poses.
Sorry, I think we have to acknowledge the beauty of the puddly mixture there.
Yes,
Of
definitely.
the puddly mixture of beer. And this is again where it's couching itself in terribly formal language, heightened language, and it undercuts it by then talking about beer, and how that's working. The style here is actually very nice, and it's starting to remind me of things like Woodhouse and Pratchett, of that thing of using a different tone and then undercutting it with what you're actually talking about. Clever Nash. Sorry,
Well,
Eric.
also spirits and drinking. I mean, come on.
Theory.
But again,
Yeah.
he's not above a low joke. And I'm liking that. Eric, continue with the rooms.
All rheums, poses, sciatices, dropsies, and gouts are diseases of their phlegmatic engendering. Seafaring men of what sort soever are chief entertainers of those spirits. Greedy vintners likewise give hospitality to a number of them, who, having read no more scripture than that miracle of Christ's turning water into wine in Canaan, think to do a far stranger miracle than he did by turning wine into water.
Alehouses and cooks, shady pavilions by watery spirits are principally upholden.
The spirits of the earth are they which cry, all bread and no drink, that love gold and a buttoned cap above heaven. The worth and naught they respect, but the weight, good wits they naturally hate, insomuch as the element of fire, their progenitor, is a waste good and a consumer. If with their earth-ploughing snouts they can turn up a pearl out of a dunghill, it is all they desire. Witches have many of these spirits, and kill kine with them. The giants and chieftains of those spirits are powerful sometimes to bring men to their ends, but not a jot of good can they do for their lives.
Soldiers with these terrestrial spirits participate part of their essence, for nothing but iron and gold, which are earth's excrements, they delight in. Besides, in another kind they may be said to participate with them, insomuch as they confirm them in their fury and congeal their minds with a bloody resolution. Spirits of the earth that spirits of the earth they were that entered into the herd of swine in the gospel. There is no city merchant or country purchaser but is haunted with a whole host of these spirits of the earth. The Indies is their metropolitan realm of abode.
As for the spirits of the air, which have no other visible bodies of form but such as by the unconstant glimmering of our eyes is begotten, they are in truth all show and no substance, deluders of our imagination and naught else. Carpet knights, politic statesmen, women and children they most converse with. Carpet knights they inspire with a humour of setting big looks on it, being the basest cowards under heaven, covering an ape's heart with a lion's case, and making false alarums when they mean nothing but a May game. Politic statesmen they privily incite, to blear the world's eyes with clouds of commonwealth pretences, to broach any enmity or ambitious humour of their own under a title of their country's preservation, to make it fair or foul when they list to procure popularity, or induce to preamble to some mighty piece of prowling to stir up tempests round about, and replenish heaven with prodigies and wonders, the more to ratify their avaricious religion. Women they underhand instruct to pounce and bolster out their brawn-fallen deformities, to new parboil with painting their rake-lean, withered visages, to set up flax shops on their foreheads, when all their own hair is dead and rotten, to gum their teeth round with comfits, when they have not a tooth left in their heads to help them to chide withal.
Children they seduce with garish objects and toyish babies, abusing them many years with slight vanities, so that you see all their whole influence is but thin, overcast vapours, flying clouds dispersed with the least wind of wit or understanding.
None of these spirits of the air or the fire have so much predominance in the night as the spirits of the earth and the water. For they, feeding on foggy-brained melancholy, engender thereof many uncouth, terrible monsters. Thus much observe, by the way, that the grossest part of our blood is the melancholy humour, which in the spleen congealed, whose office is to disperse it, with his thick steaming fenny vapours, casteth a mist over the spirit, and clean bemasketh the fantasy.
And even as slime and dirt in a standing puddle engender toads and frogs and many other unsightly creatures. So this slimy melancholy humour, still threatening as it stands still, engendereth many misshapen objects in our imaginations. Sundry times we behold whole armies of men skirmishing in the air, dragons, wild beasts, bloody streamers, blazing comets, fiery strakes, with other apparitions innumerable, whence have all these their conglomerate matter, but from fuming meteors that arise from the earth. So from the fuming melancholy of our spleen mounteth that hot matter into the higher region of the brain, whereof many fearful visions are framed. Our reason, even like drunken fumes, it displaceth and intoxicates, and yields up our intellective apprehension to be mocked and trodden under foot by every false object or counterfeit noise that comes near it. Herein specially consisteth our senses' defect and abuse, that those organical parts which to the mind are ordained ambassadors do not their message as they ought, but by some misdiet or misgovernment being distempered, fail in their report, and deliver up nothing but lies and fables.
Such is our brain oppressed with melancholy, as is a clock tied down with too heavy weights or plummets, which, as it cannot choose but monstrously go a square, nor not go at all. So must our brains of necessity be either monstrously distracted or utterly destroyed thereby.
Lightly this extremity of melancholy never cometh, but before some notable sickness, it faring with our brains as with bees, who, as they exceedingly toil in turmoil before a storm or change of weather, so do they beat and toil, and are infinitely confused before sickness.
Of the effects of melancholy I need not dilate or discourse how many encumbered with it have thought themselves birds and beasts with feathers and horns and hides. Others that have been turned into glass. Others that if they should make water they should drown all the world. Others that they can never bleed enough.
Physicians in their circuit every day meet with far more ridiculous experience. Only it shall suffice a little by the way to handle one special effect of it, which is dreams.
But let's stop before we get to dreams. Okay. That's getting quite interesting because it's like you've got the sort of satirical stuff we're following on from the drink bit, and then we're getting to these sort of various character types, some of which are very familiar. A politics statesman who makes it fair or foul when they list to procure popularity is a very current description of politics, and is so this is where the sort of social commentary and satire is coming in here. But then when he starts talking about effectively a form of mental illness and this idea of people having ideas about the world that are just inside their heads, that people may be seeing things that are not there. And it's reminding me slightly of the film Haxan, which is more specifically about witchcraft, which goes through the traditional stories of witchcraft, and then tries to give it a then up to date 1920s definition of what is perhaps going on there, and talking about how people having effectively certain mental illnesses and how they might be treated today rather than genuine. People believing in genuine witches. And it almost feels like he's doing this approach that he's undermining the whole. He's talked about spirits and stuff and things, and now he's talking about actually we're really not very good at interpreting what the world actually is, and that we're probably just wrong a lot of the time. That's quite radical. And of course he's talking about it as melancholy. Which is, is this very dangerous disease that you can get, and is discussed quite a lot at the time that Nashe's writing is becoming part of the discourse. Liza has entered the room. Hello, Liza.
Hi, Liza.
Hi, Liza.
So yeah, that's doing something really interesting, and I didn't detect when it shifted. It's like we were halfway through a bit, and I went, "Oh, hang on, this is quite clever." you know,
It is
yeah.
very Pratchett, isn't it? In that, you've got that humor, but then you also add this hugely intelligent, making you reconsider everything about the world kind of bits.
Mm, yeah. He's really doing something really intelligent and also just still throwing in the jokes and the over elaborate descriptions and all the stuff that's already there. And yet then just not sneaking this thing in that, maybe we're just afraid of the dark because we keep seeing stuff that's not there. It's, fair dues. Kind of got a point.
Like that meme, when that pile of clothes in the corner starts to look very person-like.
Yeah.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. That we're always seeing the image in the darkness because we're always looking for a predator that's trying to kill us. And that's part of our evolutionary sort of wiring, as it were. Nash doesn't go that far,
No,
but
no, yeah.
Um, we are towards the bottom, page 7, I think, in depending which. So Liza can
Yeah.
join us if you wish, and catch up. We're getting onto dreams. We're entering dream. Someone get out the dream diary. Where is this gonna go? I'm really enjoying this. And we're reading in order, so we're going Tamara, Eric, then we'll add Liza, and then I'll follow in. And we'll do a circuit. I'll go back to Tamara. I think you actually read the last bit, but
I did leave, yeah.
we'll start with you, then Eric, and then Liza, and
Oh,
we
so I'm doing the
do a
more
dream is
dream.
nothing,
Okay, okay.
just to get us in.
A dream is nothing else but a bubbling scum or froth of the fancy which the day hath left undigested, or an after feast made of the fragments of idle imaginations.
How many sorts there be of them no man can rightly set down, since it scarce hath been heard there were ever two men that dreamed alike. Divers have written diversely of their causes, but the best reason among them all that I could ever pick out was this, that as an arrow which is shot out of a bow is sent forth many times with such force that it flieth far beyond the mark whereat it was aimed. So our thoughts intentively fixed all the day of time upon a mark we are to hit, are now and then overdrawn with such force that they fly beyond the mark of the day into the confines of the night. There is no man put to any torment, but quaketh and trembleth a great while after the executioner hath withdrawn his hand from him. In the daytime we torment our thoughts and imaginations with sundry cares and devices. All the night time they quake and tremble after the terror of their late suffering, and still continue thinking of the perplexities they have endured. To nothing more aptly can I compare the working of our brains after we have unyoked and gone to bed, and to the glimmering and dazzling of a man's eyes when he comes newly out of the bright sun into the dark shadow.
Liza.
Even as one's eyes glimmer and dazzle when they are withdrawn out of the light into darkness, so are our thoughts troubled and vexed when they are retired from labor to ease, and from skirmishing to surgery.
You must give a wounded man leave to groan while he is in dressing. Dreaming is no other than groaning, while sleep our surgeon hath us in cure.
He that dreams merrily is like a boy new breeched, who leaps and danceth for joy his pain is past. But long that joy stays not with him. For presently after his master the day, seeing him so jocund and pleasant, comes and does as much for him again, whereby his hell is renewed.
No such figure of the first chaos whereout the world was extraught as our dreams in the night. In them all states, all sexes, all places are confounded and meet together.
Our cogitations run on heaps, like men to part a fray where everyone strikes his next fellow. From one place to another, without consultation, they leap like rebels bent on a head. Soldiers just up and down they imitate at the sack of a city, which spare neither age nor beauty, the young, the old, trees, steeples, and mountains they confound in one gallimaufry.
Of those things which are most known to us, some of us have moist brains, make to ourselves images of memory. On those images of memory whereon we build in the day comes some superfluous humour of ours, like a jackanapes in the night, and erects a puppet stage, or some such ridiculous, idle, childish invention.
A dream is nothing else but the echo of our conceits in the day.
But while it falls out that one echo borrows of another, so our dreams, the echoes of a day, borrow of any noise we hear in the night.
As, for example, if in the dead of the night there be any rumbling, knocking, or disturbance near us, we straight dream of wars or of thunder. If a dog howl, we suppose we are transported into hell, where we hear the complaint of damned ghosts. If our heads lie double or uneasy, we imagine we uphold all heaven with our shoulders like Atlas. If we be troubled with too many clothes, then we suppose the nightmare rides us.
I knew one that was cramped, and he dreamt that he was torn in pieces with wild horses, and another that, having a black sant brought to his bedside at midnight, dreamt he was bidden to dinner at Ironmonger's hall.
Any meat that in the daytime we eat against our stomachs begetteth a dismal dream. Discontent also in dreams hath no little predominance. For even as from water that is troubled, the mud dispersingly ascendeth from the bottom to the top. So when our blood is chafed, disquieted, and troubled, all the light and perfect humours of our body ascend like mud up aloft into the head.
The clearest spring a little touched is creased with 1,000 circles, as those momentary circles for all the world, such are our dreams. When all is said, melancholy is the mother of dreams, and of all the terrors of the night whatsoever.
Let it but affirm it, hath seen a spirit, though it be but the moonshine on the wall. The best reason we have cannot infringe it. Sorry, I leapt in. That was Liza. Oh, well, read the next one, Liza.
Of this melancholy there be two sorts. One, that digested by our liver swimmeth like oil above water, and that is rightly termed women's melancholy, which lasteth but for an hour, and is, as it were, but a copy of their countenance. The other sinketh down to the bottom like the lees of the wine, and that corrupteth all the blood, and is the causer of lunacy. Well-moderated recreations are the medicine to both. Surfeit or excessive study the causers of either.
There were gates in Rome, out of which nothing was carried but dust and dung, and men to execution. So many of the gates of our senses serve for nothing but to convey our excremental vapours, and affrighting deadly dreams that are worse than executioners unto us.
Ah, woe be to the solitary man that hath his sins continually about him, that hath no withdrawing place from the devil and his temptations.
Much I wonder how treason and murder dispense with the darkness of the night, how they can shrive themselves to it, and not rave and die. Methinks they should imagine that hell embraceth them round, when she overspreads them with her black pitchy mantle.
Dreams to none are so fearful as to those whose accusing private guilt expects mischief every hour for their merit. Wonderful superstitious are such persons in observing every accident that befalls them, and that their superstition is as good as 100 furies to torment them. Never in this world shall enjoy one quiet day that once hath given himself over to be her slave. His ears cannot glow, his nose itch, or his eyes smart, but his destiny stands upon her trial, till she be acquitted or condemned. He is miserable. We'll pause there. Again, there's so much nice stuff in this. I mean, I do, and also we've got these lots of little, very short lines. It's like he's writing it. He's like he's woken up from a dream. He's like, I've got to write all this stuff down, man. A dream is nothing else but the echo of the conceits in the day. It's not a bad conception, some of this, of actually how the mind potentially works. I mean, to a large degree, we still don't really know how it's all going down, but we are grasping slowly towards an idea of what happens to us as we sleep. Tamara.
Well, I was going to say, it is interesting how modern the assumptions are that he's making about dreams, that, it's a combination of memory and imagination, as well as, if you hear something while you're sleeping, your brain might interpret it and add it to the dream. So a lot of this is very kind of modern psychology stuff. But then he throws the humors in, and it's like the humors rise like mud to the brain, and suddenly you're like, oh wait, no, yeah, this is early modern.
Yeah. That's cutting edge, several 100 years old medical practice there. Just won't die. The humors will take a long time to really, really get stamped out. What was I going to say? There was something there. Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me. I mean, I have literally woken up out of a dream where I thought there was an alarm going off. And as I woke up, it was actually something going, caw, caw, caw. And it was like the sound literally elided from the dream into the real sound. And it was really wonderfully. It was like one of those moments where you go, oh, things in films sometimes are real. It's like, dream sequences in films are always wrong. It's just like every so often, I'm like, oh, it's quite good.
Yeah. I had that as well. Like when we had that volcano eruption years and years ago, and you didn't have any flights going. I used to live in the flight path. So the minute that the flight started up again, that night, I had a dream about like a jet engine landing in the garden, because obviously I started hearing the planes go over our house again, and I was like, oh.
But then also that we're drifting back to a theme that Nash brought up earlier, which is that dreams and the darkness and our imaginations draw us back to things we have done wrong that might start tormenting us, guilty consciences. And that was seeded earlier, but it's nice that we come back to it here in this slightly structured way.
I just like how there's this thing about like the two types of melancholy, and the one type of melancholy is basically, it's passing, it's fine. And then the other one is like the causer of lunacy. But I love how well-moderated recreations are the medicine to both, which can sometimes sound like the NHS or like just a very non-cooperative doctor.
Yeah,
It's like,
well,
yeah,
just
you're
go
fine,
outside
you're
a
not
bit, get some
depressed.
fresh air,
Lick
get
the
some
grass, it's
sleep.
fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But also,
Have you considered just getting better? Have you considered that? That sort of logic, isn't it?
but also this idea that it's like, women's melancholy is it'll last like an hour, it will be done, not to be taken seriously.
Yes, we have this very gendered the structure that's going in there. Liza.
Yeah, but talking about melancholy, obviously they believe melancholy is a substance, it's bile, and saying that, and it seems to me that psychologically it's sort of valid. I mean, we in these days know melancholy is not an actual fluid, but we also know that the gut and the brain are more closely connected than people have thought. So I think the distinction that's being drawn in that paragraph is the distinction between sadness and depression.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, there's one kind of melancholy that's a bit like oil and it floats on the surface and it dissipates after like an hour. And then there's another kind of melancholy that just gets into your blood and weighs you down and blocks everything up and never leaves.
Yeah,
And
it's the thing about the early modern, mind is, people are not idiots. They observe behaviors and they observe activities, and just because they don't actually know what's going on or they don't have a different way of concept, it doesn't mean that they're not noticing things. And clearly Nash is, both his own observations, but also, the current thinking at the time is observing things, and he's understanding that there is something going on here, even if they don't have much idea how that's actually working.
I do like how the causers of you've got like the causer of lunacy, and then well-moderated recreations, as I mentioned, are the medicine to both. But then surfeit or the excessive study are the causes of either, which is like if you read too much, kids, you're gonna go blind. Or well, not that, but like it just feels very
all work and no
yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in a
causes you
very
to run around
technical
with an
sense.
axe. Yeah. Right. Okay. Next bit isn't formatted so neatly, so the paragraph distinctions are not so clear. So every few lines or so, when it looks like there's obviously a break, someone leap in. I'll make it a free for all. Pass the baton on by awkwardly pausing, and then
He is miserable.
a cricket or a raven.
Yes.
So take us from there.
A cricket or raven will keep him 40 times in more awe than God or the devil. If he chance to kill a spider, he hath suppressed an enemy. If a spinner creep upon him, he shall have gold rain down from heaven. If his nose bleed, some of his kinfolk is dead. If the salt fall right against him, all the stars cannot save him from immediate misfortune.
The first witch was Proserpine, and she dwelt half in heaven and half in hell. Half witches are they that, pretending any religion, meddle half with God and half with the devil. It makes sense. Meddling with the devil, I call it, when ceremonies are observed which have no ground from divinity. In another kind, witches may be said to meddle half with God and half with the devil, because in their exorcisms they use half scripture and half blasphemy.
The greatest and notablest heathen sorcerers that ever were in all their hellish adjurations used the name of the one true and ever-living God. But such a number of damned potestates they joined with him, that it might seem the stars had darkened the sun, or the moon was eclipsed by candlelight. Of all the countries... Should I go on or stop?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Of all the countries under the sky, Persia was most addicted unto dreams. Darius, king of the Medes and the Persians before his fatal discomfiture, dreamt he saw an ostrich with a winged crown overrunning the earth and devouring his jewel coffer as if it had been an ordinary piece of iron. That jewel coffer was by Alexander, surprised, and afterwards Homer's works carried in it before him, even as the mace or purse is customarily carried before our Lord Chancellor.
Hannibal dreamed a little before his death that he was drowned in the poisonous Lake Asphaltes, when it was presently his hap within some few days' distance to seek his fate by the same means in a vault under earth. In India, the women very often conceive by devils in their sleep.
In Ireland? Ireland? Iceland? I don't know.
I will look. Hang on. That's a good question. What is that one? That's Iceland. That's Iceland there.
In Iceland, yeah, makes sense. As I have read and heard, spirits in likeness of one's father or mother after they are deceased do converse with them as naturally as if they were living.
Other spirits, like rogues, they have among them, destitute of all dwelling and habitation, and they chillingly complain if a constable ask them Shevula in the night, that they are going to Mount Hecla to warm them.
That Mount Hecla a number conclude to be hell-mouth, for near unto it are heard such yellings and groans as Ixion, Titius, Sisyphus, and Tantalus, blowing all in one trumpet of distress, could never conjoined bellow forth.
Bondmen in Turkey or in Spain are not so ordinarily sold as witches sell familiars there. Far cheaper you may buy a wind amongst them than you can buy wind or fair words at the court. 3 knots in a thread or an old grandam's blessing in the corner of a napkin will carry you all the world over.
We, when we frown, knit our brows, but let a wizard there knit a noose or a riding snarl on his beard, and it is hail, storm, and tempest a month after.
More might be spoken of the prodigies this country sends forth, if it were not too much erring from my scope. Whole islands they have on ice, on which they build and traffic on as on the mainland.
Admirable above the rest are the incomprehensible wonders of the bottomless Lake Vether, over which no fowl flies but is frozen to death, nor any man passeth but he is senselessly benumbed like a statue of marble. All the inhabitants round about it are deafened with the hideous roaring of his waters when the winter breaketh up. And the ice in his dissolving gives a terrible crack like to thunder, when as out of the midst of it, as out of Mount Gibel, a sulphurous stinking smoke issues that well nigh poisons the whole country.
A poison light on it. How come I to digress to such a dull Lenten northern clime, where there is nothing but stockfish, whetstones, and cod's heads? Oh, yeah, now I remember me. I have not lost my way so much as I thought, for my theme is the terrors of the night, and Iceland is one of the chief kingdoms of the night, they having scarce so much day there as will serve a child to ask his father blessing. Marry, with one commodity they are blessed. They have ale that they carry in their pockets like glue, and whenever they would drink, they set it on the fire and melt it.
It is reported that the Pope long since gave them a dispensation to receive the sacrament in ale, insomuch as for their incessant frosts there, no wine but was turned so red in ale as soon as ever it came amongst them. Farewell, frost, as much as say as farewell, Iceland, for I have no more to say to thee.
Okay, and I think that's a good place to pause. Lots of sort of casual generalizations about other countries and their practices, some of which are more problematic than others. But it is interesting because, again, we're sort of diving slightly into this logic of other just stories, and he is clearly just rambling, and I love the way he pulls it back and just goes, now what am I saying? Oh yeah, no, I remember that it's a word association stuff, and yeah, he does sort of pull it back, but yeah, it's an interesting sort of side hustle that he just drifts and then he owns it, and that's quite a nice little bit of technique. Thoughts on that? Quite a lot in there.
Yeah. I did say in the chat, just remind me to bring up the bit about meddling with God, half with God and half with the devil, because that's quite a religious thing, and that's still quite contentious in various Christian circles, in terms of, how much are you allowed to actually believe in demons? If you are a true Christian, you shouldn't, because it's this sort of stuff doesn't fit into Christianity. So there is this tension there that he's kind of acknowledging, with, and clearly he's got an opinion on it. He's saying that they are witches if they do that.
And at the time you'd have people who would be functioning as cunning folk who would be good Christians, but would also be engaged in something what we might describe as sort of sympathetic magic and various practices along those lines. But they'd still be good Christians on many levels. And I think that thing of going, well, technically you can't choose, you can't pick and mix, and that also then draws back to the whole questions of the confession. You can't be a bit one and a bit the we don't have the ecumenical matter available for people yet, and so this question of how you're practicing ideas, and it's just like, no, a little bit of woolly thinking here is not allowed. You really have to know your master to the colors here. And then I say he goes into this travel log, which is very Dr. Faustus, actually.
Yeah.
Those bits about, they can use a hanky and fly on it, and it's a sort of magic carpet sort of thing, isn't it? But lots of those little bits felt of that ilk, and we're sort of feeding into that.
Well,
Other
the,
thoughts?
the bit about when he said Persia was most addicted unto dreams, I thought he was going to go off on one about like opium and the opium trade, but maybe that's just me. Because I assumed that it had been discovered by this point and like it had been in trade. Yeah.
I find it interesting that, like, yes, there are glaring rumors and stuff that he's clearly just making up about Iceland, but he's getting a fair bit right.
There is a lot of travel writing, of course, also starting to take off now. So I don't know what his sources may be for some of this stuff.
I mean, I suppose the thing about spirits in the likeness of one's father and mother, the sort of I'm pronouncing it horribly because I'm not Icelandic, but draugrs, the kind of well, they weren't ghosts, they were more like zombies, but intelligent zombies that you could speak to. That was something that, you have in the sagas. So that's something he could have feasibly read somewhere, because presumably the sagas were out there, or heard, because people might have told it. But also he's describing a where is it? He's describing the geyser in Iceland quite well.
Liza, you're muted at the moment, so we're not hearing any of your introductions.
Lake Vättern is a real place, but it's in Sweden, not Iceland.
Yes.
Easy to
Well, it's north.
What?
It's fine.
Sweden, in the middle of it, has two of the biggest inland lakes in Europe, Vänern and Vättern. So I can believe that when the ice melts in spring, it makes a noise that everyone can hear.
Yeah, I mean, he's mixing that up with the geyser in Iceland, with the whole, there's a terrible crack, and then in the midst of it, sulfurous, stinking smoke issues, and I mean, I'm assuming that's the geyser. It could just be a volcano he's describing.
Well, it sounds like a geyser.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about water.
Yeah. What I find fascinating is that he went the first, which was prospering, and I'm like, isn't that like basically the Latin name for Persephone? And I'm like, half in heaven, half in hell. That sort of.
Proserpina, I think, or Proserpine.
I can't pronounce it. I'm like, this name is spelled wrongly in my head, but yeah. But I just found it fascinating because it's like, oh yes, half in heaven, half in hell, as opposed to like half on earth and half on, yeah. But he obviously knows the myths because he mentioned fauns, satyrs, dryads, and all that earlier. So
I mean, he's thoroughly got a good classical education. I know he does know his stuff. There's absolutely no doubt of that. From his other work.
It's just like Norse stuff, because I recently got into Norse myths again. Thank you, Eric.
Hey, how is this my fault?
And it fascinates me that he's got something specific about that, right? Because that's not, classical is one thing, but Norse myths, not so often. And I do like that he just starts cursing and he's like, was I?
Yeah, and it's like because it's very conversational, and this is the thing. The whole thing is presented in this conversational way, because of course, if you're writing it, you just cross out that bit and you just don't. It's a conceit, which is drawing the reader into it in quite a fun way.
No, I do like the bit about like it is reported that the Pope long since because it's so cold up in Iceland,
Mm.
it gave them a dispensation to receive the sacrament in ale
Yeah.
because obviously ale will not freeze as fast as anything else.
Yeah, I do not know the truth of many of these practices that he discusses.
Yeah.
I suspect many of them. In India, the women very often conceive by devils in their sleep. I think it's just straightforwardly racist, isn't it? So let's just move on from that. Eric, we'll do a final little section before we close off. I care not much, I think, is the next bit.
Okay. I care not much if I dream yet a little more, and to say the truth, all this whole tractate is but a dream. For my wits are not half awaked in it. And yet no golden dream, but a leaden dream is it. For in a leaden standish I stand fishing all day, but have none of St. Peter's luck to bring a fish to the hook that carries any silver in the mouth. And yet there be of them that carry silver in the mouth too, but none in the hand. That is to say, they are very bountiful and honourable in their words, but except it be to swear indeed, no other good deeds come from them.
Filthy Italian at compliment mongers they are, who would fain be counted the court's gloriosos and the refined judges of wit. When, if their wardrobes and the withered bladders of their brains were well searched, they have nothing but a few moth-eaten codpiece suits made against the coming of Monsieur in the one, and a few scraps of outlandish proverbs in the other, and these alone do buckler them from the name of beggars and idiots. Otherwhile, perhaps they may keep a coil with the spirit of Tasso, and then they fold their arms like braggarts and writhe their necks a la Neapolitano, and turn up their eyeballs like men entranced.
Come, I am entranced from my text, I wot well, and talk idly in my sleep longer than I should. Those that will hearken to any more dreams, I refer them to Artemidorus, Synesius, and Cardan, with many others which only I have heard by their names. But I thank God had never the plodding patience to read, for if they be no better than some of them I have perused, every weatherwise old wife might write better.
What sense is there that the yolk of an egg should signify gold, or dreaming of bears, or fire, or water, debate, and anger, that everything must be interpreted backwards, as witches say their paternoster, good being the character of bad, and bad of good?
As well, we may calculate from every accident in the day, and not go about any business in the morning till we have seen on which hand the crow sits.
Oh, Lord, I've heard many a wise gentlewoman say, I am so merry and have laughed so heartily that I'm sure ere long to be crossed with some sad tidings or other. All one as if men coming from a play should conclude, well, we have seen a comedy today, and therefore there cannot choose but be a tragedy tomorrow.
I do not deny, but after extremity of mirth follow many sad accidents. But yet those sad accidents, in my opinion, we merely pluck on with the fear of coming mischief, and those means we in policy most use to prevent it soonest enwrap us in it. And that, as was Satan's trick in the old world of gentilism, to bring to pass all his blind prophecies.
Could any man set down certain rules of expounding of dreams, and that their rules were general, holding in all as well as in some, I would begin a little to list to them, but commonly that which is portentive in a king is but a frivolous fancy in a beggar, and let him dream of angels, eagles, lions, griffins, dragons. Never so, all the augury under heaven will not allot him so much as a good alms.
Some will object unto me for the certainty of dreams, the dreams of Cyrus, Cambyses, Pompey, Caesar, Darius, and Alexander. For those I answer that they were rather visions than dreams, extraordinarily sent from heaven to foreshow the translation of monarchies.
The Greek and Roman histories are full of them, and such a stir they keep with their augurers and soothsayers, how they foretold long before by dreams and beasts and birds' entrails the loss of such a battle, the death of such a captain or emperor, when false knaves they were all as Prophet Calchas, pernicious traitors to their country and them that put them in trust. and were many times hired by the adverse party to dishearten and discourage their masters by such conny-catching riddles as might in truth be turned any way.
An easy matter was it for them to prognosticate treasons and conspiracies in which they were underhand in linked themselves, and however the world went, it was a good policy for them to save their heads by the shift. For if the treasons chanced afterwards to come to light, it would not be suspected they were practices in them, insomuch as they revealed them, or if they should by their confederates be appealed as practices, yet might they plead and pretend it was done but of spite and malice to supplant them for so bewraying and laying open their intents.
This trick they had with them, besides, that never till the very instant that any treason was to be put in execution, and it was so near at hand that the prince had no time to prevent it, would they speak one word of it or offer to disclose it. Yeah, and even then such unfit seasons for their colourable discovery would they pick forth, as they would be sure he should have no leisure to attend it.
But you will ask, why at all as then should they step forth to detect it? Marry, to clear themselves to his successors that there might be no revenge prosecuted on their lives.
So did Spurina, the great astrologer. Even as Caesar, in the midst of all his business, was going hastily to the Senate House, he popped a bill in his hand of Brutus and Cassius' conspiracy, and all the names of all those that were colleagued with them.
Well, he might have thought that in such haste by the highway side he would not stay to peruse any schedules, and well he knew and was ascertained that as soon as ever he came into the capital, the bloody deed was to be accomplished.
Shall I impart unto you a rare secrecy, how these great famous conjurers and cunning men ascend by degrees to foretell secrets as they do? First and foremost, they are men which have had some little sprinkling of grammar learning in their youth, or at least I will allow them to have been surgeons or apothecaries' prentices. These, I say, having run through their thrift at the elbows and riotously among harlots and makeshifts, spend the annuity of halfpenny ale that was left them, fall a-beating their brains how to botch up an easy gainful trade and set a new nap on an old occupation.
Hereupon, presently they rake some dunghill for a few dirty boxes and plasters, and of toasted cheese and candles' ends, temper up a few ointments and syrups, which, having done far north or into some such rude, simple country, they get them and set up.
Scarce 1 month have they stayed there, but what with their vaunting and prating and speaking Fustian instead of Greek, all the shires round about do ring with their fame. And then they begin to get them a library of 3 or 4 old rusty manuscript books, which they themselves nor any else can read, and furnish their shops with 1,000 quid pro quos that would choke any horse. Besides some waste trinkets in their chambers hung up, which may make half the world half in jealousy they can conjure.
They will evermore talk doubtfully, as if there were more in them than they meant to make public, or was applicable to every common man's capacity. When God be their rightful judges, they utter all that they know, and a great deal more.
To knit up their knaveries in short, which in sooth is the hangman's office, and no one else, having picked up their crumbs thus prettily well in the country, they draw after a time a little nearer, and nearer to London, and at length into London they filch themselves privily. But how? Not in the heart of the city will they presume at first dash to hang out their rat banners, but in the skirts and outshifts steal out a sign over a cobbler's stall like aqua vita sellers and stocking menders.
Many poor people they win to believe in them, who have not a barreled herring or a piece of poor John that looks ill on it. But they will bring water that he was steeped in unto them in an urinal. But they will bring the water that he was steeped in unto them in an urinal, and crave their judgment whether he be rotten, or the merchant and chatmanable or no. The bruit of their cunning, thus travelling from alehouse to alehouse, at length is transported in the great hills of one or other country servingman's sword to some good tavern or ordinary, where it is no sooner arrived, but it is greedily snatched up by some dapper Monsieur Diego, who lives by telling of news and false dice. And it maybe have a pretty insight into the cards also, together with a little skill in his Jacob's staff and his compass, being at all times to discover a new passage to Virginia.
This needy gallant with the qualities aforesaid straight trudgeth to some nobleman's to dinner, and there enlargeth on the rumour of this new physician, comments upon every glass and vial that he hath, raileth on our Galenists and calls them dull gardeners and haymakers in a man's belly, compares them to dogs who when they are sick eat grass, and says they are no better than pack or malt horses, who if a man should knock out their brains will not go out of the beaten highway, whereas his horse leash will leap over the hedge and ditch of 1,000 Dioscorides and Hippocrates, and give a man 20 poisons in one, but he would restore him to perfect health. With this strange tale, the nobleman, inflamed, desires to be acquainted with him. What does me he, but goes immediately and breaks with this mountebank, telling him if he will divide his gains with them, he will bring him in custom, with such and such states, and he shall be countenanced in court as he would desire. The hungry drugger, ambitious after preferment, agrees to anything, and to court he goes, where, being come to interview, he speaks nothing but broken English like a French docteur, pretending to have forgotten his natural tongue by travel, when he hath actually never been farther than either the Low Countries or Ireland, and forced thither to fly, either for getting a maid with child or for marrying 2 wives.
Sufficeth he set a good face on it, and will swear he can extract a better balsamum out of a chip than the balm of Judea. Yea, all receipts and authors you can name he syllogizeth of, and makes a pish at in comparison of them he hath seen and read, whose names, if you ask, he claps you in the mouth with a half a dozen spruce titles, never till he invented them heard of by any Christian. But this is most certain, if he be of any sect, he is a metal brewing Paracelsian, having not passed 1 or 2 probatums or for all diseases. But case he be called to practice, he excuseth it by great cures he hath in hand, and will not encounter an infirmity but in the declining, that his credit may be more authentical, or else when by some secret intelligence he is thoroughly instructed of the whole process of his unrecoverable extremity, he comes gravely marching like a judge, and gives the peremptory sentence of death, whereby he is accounted a prophet of deep prescience. But how he comes to be the devil's secretary, all this long tale unripes not. Which is where we're going to stop, because it was like I was spending all this time going, is there a pause point? Is there a pause point? Is there a pause point? No, God damn it.
But that's a cliffhanger. We need to know.
Well, yes.
No, you end on a cliffhanger. That's the point of a cliffhanger. You need...
Yeah.
But Demi's hanging on to it for like a month. Well, no,
right, it won't be a month, but it'll probably be a couple of weeks. There's lots of interesting little things that came out probably out of the beginning of this. Was like buying a book to explain your dreams is clearly, in Nashe's opinion, a waste of time. Oh yeah, yolk will signify gold, and water will mean this, and it's like, yeah, I don't unpack your dream diaries. It's not worth it. I like that. Also, this distinction. You might say that you will have heard of the dreams of Cyrus. No, that was a vision. Technically, different thing. Dreams are not visions. Visions are yeah. See, but also they can just be lies because people double cross you and cover it up by telling you the thing that you're doing to them. I'm not sure I wholly buy that one actually, but it's an interesting one. Thoughts on dream diaries?
Well, it's also factually wrong with Caesar because the prophecy was trying to keep him from going to the Senate, if I remember correctly, rather than,
Well, the argument he's making here is that he was just covering his bases. Like, it was like, if he doesn't get murdered, he's good. And if he does get murdered, it doesn't matter, he's been murdered. So it's like, he's sort of retconning it to fit his argument.
Mm.
I,
Anyway,
I
happy Ides of March,
mm,
everyone.
yeah, for all those who celebrate. Um, so yeah, and then we get into a bit of sort of mountebanking, sort of fake doctoring stuff. At great length, which we sort of rattled through because I was sort of looking for a point to pause. So yeah, any additional thoughts on this?
Well,
Yeah,
sorry,
Tamara.
Tamara.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot today, but
That's all right.
it, you know how at the very beginning he's like, if you could give me more money, I could write better. I wonder if he just wrote Terrors of the Night overnight instead of sleeping. It just brings me back to Eric's idea of the Tumblr post of like 3 a.m.
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah. I
It
mean,
feels like he did this instead of sleeping. And it kind of works with the weird tangents he sometimes goes on.
Yeah, I mean it is written. It seems to be written at pace, and this is, I think, the way this kind of literature works. I mean, I don't think he could physically do it overnight, but he could probably do it in a few nights. It's not that long. It depends on how good his penmanship is and how quickly he can write, but they're not necessarily. It's not necessarily easy to write really that quickly. 15,000 words is perhaps a little tight. But yeah, I think it's probably written at some pace, and that he's styling it out. He's making the sense that he's got a bit rambly into part of the way he's writing. Liza.
I wonder, as with the Italianate courtier who promises everything and delivers nothing, whether the mountebank or the charlatan or the prophet that he's describing might be modeled on someone that he knew. When is this, Rob? Is this late 1500s?
Yeah, 1590s ish.
So we could be talking about John Dee or about Simon Forman.
Oh well, they're definitely alive. Yeah. I mean, John Dee lived
He
for
talks
quite a
about
long
having
time.
flown to the Low Countries. Dee did spend some time in the Netherlands. I'm not sure what Simon Forman's story was.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting because he talks about his sources. He talks about, I have read some things which were shit, and I have looked at the titles of some others. And it's like he's done some research. At least within the world, the logic of the world. But it's a question of how much actual research he's done. Again, it feels quite skimmy. Like again, it's like it has run away from him a bit. But then that's sort of part of the logic of it all. I'm trying to find a precise date. It's somewhere around 1590. I think it's earlier than that. Yes, other thoughts? I mean, it doesn't have a center. I think that's my problem, is that there's a lot of really good stuff, and I'm really enjoying it, and it is fun. Um, but and it's also quite difficult to unpick because it flows constantly into itself. It's quite an accomplishment to do that, actually, to keep those threads flowing in most of the time he doesn't pause and go, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Most of the time he manages to make it flow into it. 1594 is the date I have here. So is printed 1594, registered for printing, stationer's register, and June 30th, 1593. So early 1590s is when he's writing this. So yeah, not his first work by any stretch of the imagination, and not his last. Just
I just like how he describes like how rumors end up about like this kind of rumors about charlatans slash physicians invert yeah end up becoming like how they spread. He's like, they start off in the country, in the periphery, and then they get closer and closer to London, and then they get even closer, and somehow they win over the poor people, and then that their sort of cunning travels from alehouse to alehouse, and it's like it just how
mm.
it just feels very yeah.
and picking his targets as well. It's like I'm only going to practice on someone I know is getting better or I know is going to die. And so I can predict their recovery with my quack medicines, or I can just turn up like the harbinger of death and just say, "You are doomed."
As opposed to like the George Peele who just gave a ton
Got
of
lucky.
stuff to yeah
Yeah.
gave a ton of stuff to someone who was ill and just like went, oh, they're better.
Yeah, that's the narrative that could have gone horribly, horribly wrong, really.
Yeah.
I think we're really enjoying Thomas Nashe's style. I'm not immediately seeing a a wide application for this text. It's a little too rambly. That's not to say it won't have one. Certainly, perfectly happy to do a recording or do something with it. But I'm not immediately seeing it as a show. It's not speaking to me that way. But pitches and thoughts on that, if people can see it. Any final thoughts in the room before I close this session?
What was his damage? No, it's just like sort of because he goes from like, the devil to melancholy to okay, the devil for a bit and then like back to charlatans and like sort of traveling and then like it just kind of like it feels like he's working on something but not he's working on some sort of thing to say.
Well,
But
yeah, that's why I said it feels like he wrote it instead of sleeping or something. He wrote it to hit a word count. I don't know. It's good.
maybe he was
It's not
doing
that it's
NaNoWriMo.
bad, but I feel like you can make parts of it into lovely, lovely monologues, but the whole, I don't know.
Mm, okay. Any more
Maybe
for
he
any
was
more?
doing NaNoWriMo or something. Like
Mm,
having to hit a deadline.
mm, mm. Far too much caffeine. Liza.
Just, I've only been in for the end of this, but I'm kind of loving his sort of meta commentary going, I'm off the subject, aren't I? Yeah, I'm off the subject. Well, I'm just going to tell you a little more about this, and then I'll get back to, I talked about this too much. Fuck it.
Mm,
I do like how he talks about how he's writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mm. Okay. Well, till next time, we will return to the Terrors of the Night. We'll finish it off. It's not we're past the halfway mark, so that's nice. Till next time, thanks to all the wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. A dream is nothing else but a bubbling scum.